yesterday that I hadn't thought it or planned it that way, but it coincided with some of the things that have been happening topically as far as like tensions, what are called military tensions right now. And I wanted to riff some more on that, and uh, and I want to say before I begin this topic, I want to be sober and give thanks. I really want to commend. There's a few great. I think each generation and maybe each like maybe so every century, half a century, quarter century, things like that have some really great people, and one of ours was Tupac Shakur. Some ways that you can know that Tupac was great is that his music it transcends generations. So he's almost like a fixture. He's like an epoch in itself. Like because anybody you can imagine Tupac Shakur. I remember my grandmother. My grandmother was born in the 20s, the mid 20s. She lived through the Great Depression, and I can remember talking to her like maybe like I would visit her a lot as an adult man. Like so all the way from like 2010, 11. I lost my grandfather in 2011, and I still visit my grandmother up until about 2017. We lost her, but I remember one time visiting her, like I think it was like maybe the 90s, because my grandmother is from she grew up around farming. She was from like a strict farming background. She woke up very early with the chickens, but she was actually terrified of chickens. It's strange. My grandmother grew up on a farm, but she had some kind of incident happen with chickens when she was very young, and she was completely terrified of chickens her whole life. Whatever. I think that chicken was going for something like they try to call that chicken some chicken tenders, or like maybe like a spicy chicken sandwich before it was its time, and that chicken wasn't finna go about it. And it didn't matter if that was the farmer's daughter, the farmer, the soon to inherit the farm, whatnot. That chicken wasn't going for some chicken tenders that time. And so it shook her, and I could see that like she just wouldn't, even when she was grown, she wouldn't talk about it, just not to do with chickens. But I remember one time like in the 90s, because I grew up squarely in the 90s. The last month of 85, a month before 86 I was born. Then the last 4 years of the 80s, the 90s, and the first 4 years of 2000s. I turned 18 like a month before 2004. That 90s time has so much of beautiful. That was a very influential time. Looking back on it, some of the most prolific art has come out of there in all different forms. But I grew up as a child. If you can imagine how that would impress a child to grow up listening to songs like Gin and Juice. Like imagine just Gin and Juice come on the radio, or you're waiting for that to come on as a kid. Like I had no business watching stuff like that, but it was so much of art that almost anyone at any age of life can like that song. But my grandma was like, man, what they're doing with the music is it's really like it's like sophisticated. Like the way that they rhyme the words together like that, it's actually brilliant. My grandma would sound like that, and she had nothing to do with like a cool lifestyle like what they be talking about in Gin and Juice. But that's just how real art and music is transcended like that. But you could say that Tupac could have potentially influenced or been heard by someone from my grandma's generation, like 1920. I'm born in the I'm born in the 80s, so I grew up. There would have been people alive in my lifetime who were born in the 1800s. By the time the 90s came around and Tupac was out, Tupac would have been he could have been heard by someone born in the 1800s, potentially Tupac. Now, if someone were born today in 2026, it's likely by the time that they get. I was just thinking about I have a really close friend and who means something to me, and he had a child born some several years back, and I was just appreciating that it's coming up like a significant interval, and I was thinking, so even if a child were born say today 2026, and in 10 years from now they could still listen to Tupac, and Tupac would be profound like that. So Tupac he's beyond actually generations, but the way that you know Tupac. So one thing that's great about him is that people from different walks of life, they can hear that it sounds good to his music. Can like if you even if somebody like I bet you like people that don't even know English, like I bet you that people overseas, any side of anything, Afghanistan, Iraq, Korea, any place that might have any kind of background or any kind of smoke with anything, they hear a song like Pour Out a Little Liquor. You don't even have to know English, and you know what that song is about. You hear that like that, or like How Long Will They Mourn Me? I wish it would have been another. How long will they mourn my brother? How long will they mourn me? Each and every day, homie. You stayed down when the others, homie, didn't know me. That's not only Tupac's greatness, but that's also, I think that might have been Nate Dogg on there, or that's the Thug Life album. A lot of people don't know that Tupac was actually part of a rock band, Thug Life. He has that tattooed on his stomach, Thug Life. I think it refers to the hate you give in wait, Thug Life, the hate you give infants, F's everything. That's Thug Life. The person who told me that was, I met this guy, the real actual this man. He's I won't say his full name, but part of his name has to do with Boogie, and he lived up to that name. But he's such a cold dude that a lot of people will pay lip service to Tupac, pay homage to Tupac, right? But this brother, he starts reading me. He starts reading me like this rare book about Tupac, about like rare verses. He knows them by heart, rare Tupac verses. Then the man, he's not black, mind you. He's a white man. He get to crying, talk about Tupac. He talk about Tupac. He's like, this man. He come from a real background. His name actually said something to do about Boogie, and he from a real background like that. But he's like, that was messed up how they did Tupac like that. It actually made this man start crying how much he feel away about Tupac like that. So shout out to that man also that he feel away about Tupac. But all I'm saying is that what's profound about Tupac is that as you live life, his music never stop. His action music improves. He's no longer here, but his music starts. It can be more meaningful. It's actually living music like that. Like some people would say that some books are like that. Like the Holy Bible has been called a living text, and that it grows with you. It grows with life itself. It's a part of this life. Different people all over the world are still interfacing with the Holy Bible, are still growing from it, are still comparing notes about it. So it's part of the human experience. But so too is Tupac like that, and his actually the man who he is. You could almost say that some people are called twice born. Like, I think it's called Duij in India. I think it's called Duij, a twice born. And I think Tupac, he may have been like almost like beyond that. You may even call him like a thrice born, like an actual living. He's almost nearby an immortal. The closest that we may have to an immortal in this life may have to be something of an artist, because life itself is fleeting, ephemeral. That means fleeting, and it's transitory, and it's perishing, and that's actually what gives, and it's tragic thereby, and that's what gives art some of its beauty. But then the closest we may have to actually to tasting or touching or being touched by an immortal being would be actually the work that is the work sustained by the breath, the breathing, the breath, the footwork, the breath of an artist, and that actually can speak to something in transcendent terms. Tupac spoke in transcendent terms and was thereby a transcendent man, and his statements and his art, his life actually transcended itself while he was still with us and beyond. So I was impressed by his song lately. It said, "Everything will be all right if you hold on. If you can make it through the night, there's a brighter day. Everything will be all right if you hold on." So I just been I had me a few nights on the living rough, a few nights, and then I just got into an accommodation or it's a much better, decent place, not far away from where I was living rough, but a better situation. And it exactly made me think of Tupac, where he said, everything will be all right if you hold on. And some of these things that you grow up with as a child, when that flashes, when you hear something like that, it's actually impacting so you think you hear it liminally, like some people would say like liminals, like they're throwing like some people will have smoke with you if you're throwing subs at somebody. That means subliminal insults. That also means oblique. So let's say I have someone and they're having a bicycle. They ride by on a bicycle, and then I just start like they're on let's say they're on a mountain bike. And then I started talking about how like, man, it's all about trick bikes, man. If it ain't a trick bike, I ain't messing with it. That's a subliminal, also oblique barb at that person, because that person can appreciate that I would be aware of them. I'm somewhat mocking them by I'm reminding them that yes, they are actually on what they are on, which is a mountain bike, but it's also not the greatest thing. So I'm mocking them, I'm dismissing them, I'm insulting them. That's called subliminal subs, but also oblique. And then, but a different way to say that is that you have liminal, subliminal, superliminal, paraliminal, normal liminal. So liminal actually means your awareness. So right now as I speak, I think that I'm aware of what's in front of me. There's a lot more in front of me, in front of my very eyes, that I'm aware of through my eyes, because I have something called like RAS. I bumped into someone on the train, and he was impressed that I knew what RAS was. He was taken aback by that. But you can learn about anything on YouTube, and I picked that up by the works of RSD, Real Social Dynamics, that group that was a lot about breaking people out of their shells and their comfort zones. There was RSD Tyler and RSD Julian, who I was influenced a lot by, and they would both talk about RAS, reticular activation system. That's similar to and not different than like what you call your lizard brain. So you have like your lizard brain is to fight, flee, and fornicate at all times. Your mind is some. I'm riffing a little bit right now, but your mind is somewhat gauging. Am I okay to be here? Now that I'm okay to be here, what are my opportunities and necessities to fight, flee, and fornicate? Even if you're married, you're in a committed relationship, you're in a private venue with your partner, your mind is still running through, shall I fight, flee, or fornicate? And then if you guys were to have words like that, now you're in a fighting mode with your very committed partner like that, or something different, or flee. You might need to flee. I've had to, for some purposes, flee my own my nearest of kin, because when it's not that we were intentionally necessarily inimical, but we're just actually so much of different people that it can be a liability to be in each other's presence. Because that's what happens when you don't get along with people, but also you're financially extended and in dire straits. So you may have to actually flee. But all I'm saying is that that's like your lizard brain. But even as I see what's in front of me, what I think liminally, what I'm aware of myself being aware of, that's the most liminal part of that. But you're and so but your experience. If I look straight in front of my face and another person has that same eye shot, they're gonna pick out way different things, and that has to do with their own experience of danger, opportunity, joy, suffering, things like that. But it all amounts to preserving their life. So your different opportunities and experiences of preserving your life, having to preserve your life, and having your life preserved, which is also part of enjoying and suffering, learning, that's going to affect your RAS and what you actually pick out of what's in front of you. But even what you can pick out in front of you is limited by your RAS. Then what is available to your RAS, that's somewhat limited. So there's different, many cascading scales of what can be perceived by you. But the most blatant basic would be to say liminal, subliminal, and superliminal. So some people would also say there's things like you have like your higher self, or your super consciousness, your consciousness, and then your subconscious and your unconscious. You also have your unconscious, which is probably the deeper part of all that. And all of life is actually, in a way, in the deepest sense, unconscious, if life were anything actually conscious, if life itself were actually conscious, so they like, some people would be challenged. How would you describe sentience? Like, so you have AI, stuff like that. Is AI sentient? What is an actual sentient being? There's an author named Arthur Avalon. I quote him a lot, and he has a book called The World is Power, and he talks about something I was talking about in the previous video today, about how sometimes something very small can be more potent because it's more refined, and it's more condensed like that, and it's less spent. It's less dissipated like that. But then also he'd be about the closest that he talks about how a lot of people would say if you talk about spirituality as a reality in itself, you sound woo-woo. If you talk about science, matter as reality itself, you sound materialistic. That's because, according to Arthur Avalon, you have always a correspondence in a range, in a scale of both mind and matter, and you can't actually dispense with one or the other. There's no experience of mind without matter that corresponds to it, because you would have to have food to eat, you'd have to have suitable actual physical parameters and different benefits that allow you to sustain consciousness. But then also, ostensibly, there's no experience of mind itself or matter itself without an experience of mind, because if you were not cognizant, if you're not conscious, if you're not liminal, how you may not, you wouldn't be experiencing that either. But then so too, how would you describe sentient? I think that it may actually be an insult to attempt to describe some things. Some things are so solemn and sacred and sublime, but also personal, is that it's a little bit of an affront to attempt to describe it or define it. And sentient might be like one like that, because sentient is actually that's actually even a better word than human, because human is ambivalent. Some people think that humans are of one lineage. Some people think that you have different forms of human beings. Some people think that you have different cosmology, but an actual more congruent way to say human, but also just living that transcends human. Because, like, say you're a human being, but your best friend in this life, man's best friend, is your dog. You're actually you can. Some people can talk to their dogs. Like, I met people in shelters that they talk to dogs, and the dog will whine to them. The dog, they're communicating with that dog as a bystander could not appreciate. And you actually are a little bit simple-minded if you think that a dog can't do that. If you look at a dog as what you think a dog is, you'd be more simple-minded than actually the dog, because the dog knows what it's capable of. It knows a lot of what you're capable of, but it also knows that you can't actually just see what the dog is itself. So you'd actually be more simple-minded than a dog if you think that dogs can't communicate. But so some people actually, their relationships, their nearest of kin, their friendship, their companion actually transcend the set of what you call human beings. But a better word than all that describes what we're called human beings, plants, animals, insects, and what you may aspire to as beyond or simpler than that or more normal than that is sentient. But how would you describe sentient? I think the best way that I could describe sentient is feeling, no more no less. Sentience is feeling. From that standpoint, they say that so entheogens are plant, animal, and mineral substances, which includes metals that can affect a person's state of a person's conscious awareness. That's a better word than drug, because drug is a buzzword, a coined buzzword that has legal and political applications that amount to marginalizing and segregating human outcomes for happiness, viability, and existence upon the earth. The word drug is like that, but entheogen it constitutes, but it also